Hey guys, welcome to TV Talk with Natasha and Kim, and I am Natasha, aka Natty Willie.
And I'm Kim.
And where can they find us on Twitter? You can find me at WillCat12. And where can they find you, Kim?
At Anime23, or if you want to hit us up at the Nerd Element, we are at the Nerd Element.
Woohoo! This is our first TV recap. We're going to do the show Grimm, and it premiered yesterday, finally, just in time for Halloween. And so what we're going to redo for you is recap Season 1, Season 2, and then do the premiere episode. So I will be doing Season 1, and Kim?
Yep, I will be doing Season 2.
And then we'll both review the premiere episode. So if you have not watched Grimm, you need to be watching Grimm, okay? Because it's a good show. It's about this guy named Nick. He finds out that he comes from a long line of these superhumans called Grimms, and what they can do is just have the ability to see the different type of creatures called Wesen. And what they do is they vulga when they're stressed or when they're in some kind of heightened emotion. And most humans cannot see them when they vulga, but Nick can. So that's great. So when we do the premiere episode, or when it first premiered, like way back in 2011, Nick is with his girlfriend, Juliet. They're all happy. He's a cop. And his aunt stops by and, comes for a visit, and then she just tells him all this stuff. And at the same time, he's starting to notice that he's able to see these weird, you see this regular woman just walking around, and then all of a sudden she vulgas, and he's like, what's going on? I'm not understanding why I'm seeing this. So that's pretty much the first episode, and then over the course of Season 1, you kind of get to learn a little bit more about what he does and the different types of Wesen that are out there. And what's good about the show is that Nick is not like other Grimms, because apparently Grimms are supposed to just kill any type of Wesen that they encounter. Whereas since Nick is a cop, he kind of can't do that. So while some Wesen may be committing crimes, there are other Wesen that wind up helping him out. He starts this very cool bromance with this character named Monroe, who is a blue bot, which is kind of like a wolf-like creature, and he's very cool. I love Monroe. He's one of my favorite characters. And at the same time, Nick is learning to be a Grimm. He's also keeping secrets from his partner, who is Hank, who is very cool, and his girlfriend, Juliet. And it definitely comes to a head at the end of Season 1. And you definitely get to meet some other characters like Rosalie, who is a Fushbao, who's like a fox-like creature and is very pretty. And then you have Bud, thank you. Bud, who's like a beaver-like creature, and they're very peaceful, and they're very scared of Nick at first because of his reputation as a Grimm, but then he reassures them, he helps them out, so they're pretty much loyal to him. And so the enemies that he pretty much encounters, or like his mainstay enemy in Season 1 is it Adelind?
Adelind.
Yeah. Adelind, who is played by Claire Coffey. And something happens to her in Season 1, and that really ticks her off. So she's out for revenge, and by the end of Season 1, you're like, what did she just do? And then you have Sergeant Wu, who has the best one-liners of the show. Like, every week he comes up with some kind of line, and you just gotta chuckle, and you're just gonna be like, okay, Wu is cool, and he needs to stay on the show, and he needs to be part of the gang.
Exactly. Gotta love Wu.
Well, you know what? It was assumed that Nick's parents apparently died from a car accident when he was young. Well, guess who, makes an appearance at the end of Season 1? Nick's mom. What? So that's another dynamic that just really jumped off in season 2. Even though she does make just a brief cameo, you're just like, I want more of her, and she needs to come back.
Yep. Drops the mic and walks off. That's how it ends.
Yep, that's it. I'm out.
You're like, surprise! I did like in season 1 how Nick progressively became, you know, for lack of a better word, more badass. I mean,
he was like, he had just his basic, you know, cop fighting skills, and then like by the end of season 1, he's like, I can do some sort of karate and I can kill dudes with you know, like one of those what are those things called? Like those cleavers?
He has an assortment of weapons, medieval weapons, mind you.
Yes, he does. Okay, so his aunt shows him this trailer, right? And it's just full of weapons, potions, just all kinds of stuff. And he has this book that he refers to like almost every week because, again, he's trying to learn who he is and the different creatures that he's going to be encountering. And if he sees a creature, he kind of tries to look it up. And it's like his Grimm Bible. It's like a Grimm Bible for him. And so he has to protect this trailer, and he has to tell very few people where this trailer is because there are people that are after him, and he has this at the mystery of season 1, or one of the mysteries of season 1 was that he had this key, and people were after this key, and that's kind of where his mom kind of helped him out a little bit because he was trying to protect the key, and then there's something else that he discovers that's in his possession that he needs to keep in his possession because Captain Renard is not all he appears to be. He is also a Wesson. And you kind of get to see what kind of Wesson he is in season 2. What?
That's a good segue into season 2.
Season 2!
Right, so we left off season 1, you know, with the big shocker. Hi, Nick, I'm your mother. And so it picks up with that, and you kind of see the dynamic between him and his mom, and it's interesting because he grew up, you know, being taken care of from his aunt, I believe.
Yeah.
Because he was very young when his parents supposedly died, and so, you know, he knows it's his mom, and it's just kind of like, yeah, you know, I want to be the good son or whatever, but I'm a little angry. You never reached out and let me know that you were still alive. So there's that. And she's got a completely different take on how you should treat Wesson versus him. Most Grimms were feared because they felt like, you know, Wesson shouldn't exist, and they went hunting, whereas Nick is like, they're not bothering anybody. Why do I need to bother them? I'm just going to go after the bad guys because he has the cop mentality. And his mother doesn't really have that. And he kind of teaches her that, but he's got Wesson that are friends, you know, like Monroe. And
Rosalie. Rosalie.
And Rosalie. And Bud.
So, I love Bud. He's just so adorable.
I know. I like the name Bud. I just like saying Bud. Bud. So there's that dynamic, and then at the end of season 1, Juliet goes into a coma, and it's the results of Adeline getting her revenge on Nick, and so before he could tell her what he was as a Grimm, and before he could show her Monroe Voga, she passes out and she goes into this coma. So in season 2, she comes out of that coma by something that Captain Renard does. Now, this causes her to be obsessed with him and him obsessed with her. And so the very first part of the season is that whole dynamic about them being obsessed with each other, you know, and her not remembering Nick, and just the kind of tension between those three. So it's very interesting.
That was hot. I'm sorry, that was hot.
Yeah, it was. It was very, like, because it's this kind of forbidden thing. You know, Captain Renard is trying to be like, I will not do this. This is my, you know, subordinate's girlfriend, and he's also the Grimm. And I'm just going to resist the urge. Yeah, okay. Well, it's magic, so
Yeah, exactly.
it's not going to happen. And so then you've got Nick, who, Juliet doesn't remember him. She doesn't feel comfortable around him, so he moves out of the house, and he moves in with Monroe, so their relationship gets a little stronger. And he leans on Hank a little bit more, too. But Hank, in the first season, he knows something is up. He sees Monroe Volga for a second and thought he was losing his mind. He saw another Volga from a guy who fell off of a theater balcony, I believe it was.
Right.
And died, and his face changed back to normal. And Hank saw this. And so Hank thinks he's going crazy. And I think Nick gets to the point where it's like, I can't. Hank's my friend and my partner. I've got to let him know, because he thinks he's going crazy. And what kind of friend am I if I let him think he's going mad?
Yeah, I was getting a little bit irritated when Nick just kept on keeping his mouth shut. I'm like, Hank is going crazy.
Your friend, man. That's your friend.
He needs to know.
Yes, exactly. So Hank does find out, and so he's kind of brought into this group, and so there's another dynamic there between him and Monroe and, Nick and not Juliet, but what's her name? Rosalie. I always forget her name. I don't know why. And she has such a big role too. So they kind of become friends, and then there's a sort of dynamic there too. There's just this, you see this group forming, which is kind of awesome to see. And so I always think it's funny that Captain Renard, we find out a little bit more about him. We do find out that he's half Vessan, and he's also part of the royal family that are based in Vienna, mind you. But everybody speaks French. Don't ask me why. It's in Vienna, but everybody speaks French, so I thought that was really interesting too. So we find a little bit more about Captain Renard out, and you kind of wonder, is he a bad guy or is he a good guy? Kind of goes back and forth. And, towards the end of season 2, you want to believe he's a good guy. But is he a good guy because they have the same enemy? And then if that enemy was defeated, would he become the bad guy then? There's that little question in the back of your mind. So there's that. And then, big surprise, Adeline gets knocked up. And you don't know who the father is. It's either one of the princes, Captain Renard's brother, or Captain Renard. So there's that element.
She had a little booty call with him.
Yes.
At this point, and so she was like, "I'm bouncing by. Oh, I'm pregnant."
Doing that on purpose. I think she wanted to get pregnant. That baby is worth something. I don't know what, and to whom. And they kind of discuss it, but you kind of don't know what's going on. You find a little bit more out in season 3, the very first episode, but there's a whole bunch of gypsies, and then there is Adeline's, she calls her Frau, but I don't think they're related, and she's also a Hexenbeast. And it's like Adeline's trying to sell this baby to the highest bidder. It's very interesting. So that's pretty much where they end up with season 2.
Don't forget, she's trying to get her powers back.
She is trying to get her powers back, and I think that's where the baby comes into play. But like I said, you don't know too much about that. You find a little bit more out in season 3, which we'll discuss in our next vlog. So that pretty much wraps up season 1 and season 2. I don't know, Natasha, do you have anything to add?
Well, just that, you're gonna enjoy the characters and their growth throughout both seasons, and definitely you get excited about what happens in season 3 just because of where season 2 ended. You're like, what? And then Grimm just dropped the mic. at the end of season 2 and just like, you thought this was it? Like, what? They said something and it totally ticked off like everyone that watched the season finale.
They did.
Like, are you serious?
It was like a little cliffhanger one-liner, and they did the same thing in the season premiere of
exactly.
3, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, Grimm's really good about that. And the one thing that I like about Grimm is, you know, when I first heard about this, I'm like, this is going to be a very interesting show. You know, people think of Grimm fairy tales and they hear the word fairy tales and they're like, I don't know, but these are not Disney fairy tales, mind you. I mean, even the original books, the Grimm fairy tales are scary. And
they're
so this show has a lot of those creepy elements, and I think they've done a really good job with it. I like some of the quotes they put up at the beginning, which I believe are probably from the fairy tales themselves. Don't quote me on that. Before our season 3 vlog, I will look it up and I will let you know for sure. But I really do like what they've done with the show they put together, and they've got a good cast, don't you think?
Yeah, I do enjoy the cast. Juliet, because of her storyline, she did get on my nerves a little bit, especially throughout season 2. But I am glad that right now she's in the know, because I think with season 1.
The truth.
Yeah, she did find out the truth, but I think if she had not gone through the journey that she went through in season 2, she would have been like she was at the end of season 1, which was not believing Nick and what he was telling her. And I was kind of getting a little bit irritated with Nick, because I'm like, tell her, just tell her, please. Because there was a few cases throughout season 1 where she was like, okay, something's weird is going on, and that could have been the perfect opportunity to be like, well, now that you say that, dear, there's a little bit more to the world than meets the eye. And like he could have jumped off on that, but definitely season 2. By the end of season 2, I was on Juliet's corner again. I'm glad that they're back together, and definitely see what she can contribute to what is now being termed as the Scooby Gang, as far as
correct.
The group.
Yeah. She does find out in season 2. She gets her memory back, and then Nick tells her. Monroe shows her, and so does Rosalie, and so do Bud. They all vogue in front of her. She handles it pretty well, and she accepts it, and it's, you know, and I think, I know Nick should have told her a long time ago, but I mean, I'm trying to figure out if I had the same thing happen in my life. Would I just tell, like, my friends, oh, by the way, I can see people that you can't, like, you know, and they change into monsters, and, yeah. I know, I mean, that just, you could get locked up for being crazy, so I completely understand why he kind of dragged his feet, but, again, this is also the woman that he loves. He wants to marry her. He can't start off a marriage under lies, so I'm really glad that he did it. And Scooby Gang is a good name for it.
Yeah, exactly. The thing about Juliet, though, is, like, considering how we watch certain shows like this and how, like, we read books, and granted, it's fiction, but we still think it would be cool if it was real. I mean, let's be for real. So, I mean, would I be as open-minded or as narrow-minded as Juliet was and not initially believing him? I don't know. I would like to think that I would at least have kept an open mind and be like, oh, really? All right. Can you tell me a little bit more? I mean, because it just seems like something totally off the wall, considering how Nick has always been considered, you know, normal. So if he comes out with this all of a sudden, it's kind of like, well, he's been normal at this point. Why would he make something like that up, or why would he really believe in it unless something about it was true, at least to him? So, I mean, I guess I would have to try and think of it in that point. But, again, the journey of all of the characters really have been really good, and I definitely enjoy the show. So,
well said, well said. So, all right, guys, thanks for joining us for Grimm Season 1 and 2 recap. Our first episode of TV Talk with Natasha and Kim. Check out our Season 3 premiere recap, which will be up shortly. And thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.